a powerful CEO, a vanishing translator, and a $300 million deal at stake. But just when everything begins to fall apart, someone unexpected speaks up and rewrites her future. Comment below where you're watching from, and get ready for a story that will challenge everything you believe about power, purpose, and quiet brilliance. It was 8:59 a.m., and the sun beamed through the towering windows of a coastal Los Angeles mansion, catching the gold trim of the chandeliers and spilling across marble floors imported from Milan. Everything about the home was extravagant, refined, controlled, just how Jonah Caldwell liked it. Caldwell, the billionaire founder of Caldwell Innovations, had built his fortune revolutionizing cloud tech infrastructure. Ruthless, brilliant, feared. Today, however, he was pacing his marble hallway in a tailored navy blue suit, his jaw tight, his steps sharp. Today was the meeting, one that would either secure his company's entry into the Gulf tech market or derail years of effort in less than an hour. In the conference room, 3 Arab investors sat in composed silence. Sharif El Nasir, the elder among them, glanced once at his diamond-studded watch. They didn't speak English. Caldwell's one job? Show up with a qualified Arabic translator, as they had explicitly required. Where the hell is he? Jonah growled to his executive assistant, a pale, nervous woman named Caroline. He, called. She whispered, said he fell ill in the Uber. Food poisoning. This isn't a brunch reservation. Jonah barked, grabbing his phone. He dialed every translation agency in LA and shouted at 2 department heads. No one was available within 45 minutes. The investors were already exchanging side glances, their patience clearly slipping. At the far end of the room, by the staircase, a young woman quietly wiped down a glass banister. She wore gray scrubs, no makeup, and sneakers that had seen better days. Her name tag simply read, El Omar. No one ever used it. She was invisible, always had been, but not today. Leila Omar had worked for the Caldwell household for almost 2 years. Quiet, precise, forgotten. She had wiped down office whiteboards and mahogany desks, polished trophies no one looked at, and vacuumed floors beneath meetings where deals were made about futures she wasn't supposed to be part of. But she listened. She always listened. This morning, she heard panic, the yelling, the chaos, the desperation. Leila's hands still smelled faintly of disinfectant, but her mind spun with the urgency of the moment. She knew Arabic. More than that, she knew dialects, inflections, cross-cultural nuances. She had once studied linguistics herself, before she had to drop out, before life got complicated. But to speak up now? That would mean crossing an unspoken line. Maids didn't speak in conference rooms. They didn't offer solutions in billion-dollar negotiations. Jonah slammed a chair into place, muttering, I swear to God, if this collapses. That's when Leila turned. She didn't move forward, not yet, but she stepped into the edge of the silence with a courage she had inherited, quiet and generational. Her grandmother had crossed deserts carrying children. Her mother had built a life in a foreign country with 2 jobs and no help. And Leila? She had been surviving invisibly long enough. She walked forward. Excuse me, sir, she said calmly, her voice steady. If you'd allow me, I can help. I speak Arabic. Every head turned. Caroline blinked. Jonah stared like he was seeing a ghost. You're the cleaner? Yes, and also fluent in Gulf Arabic, Egyptian Arabic, and modern Standard Arabic. My father taught linguistics back in Sudan. I used to translate for academic conferences before. She paused, then smiled faintly. Before this, Sharif El Nasir looked up at her with sudden interest. He said something, short, clipped, clearly a test. Without blinking, Leila responded in his native dialect. His eyebrows rose. A second investor leaned forward, asked a clarifying question. Again, she replied instantly. The energy in the room shifted. Jonah stepped back slightly, baffled. Are you serious? Leila turned her gaze to him. Finally, not as a maid, but as a woman who knew her worth. I'm offering a solution, Mr. Caldwell, the only one in this room right now. There was a moment, a single second, where ego, disbelief, and desperation collided inside Jonah's mind. But the stakes won. He nodded once, sharp and reluctant. Fine, sit, Make it count. She took the seat between the investors, still holding the microfiber cloth in one hand. Her first words in translation came like silk, measured, graceful, and exact. Mr. El Nasir says while he appreciates the effort, a lack of formal communication could compromise the integrity of this meeting. He prefers to postpone. Leila delivered the message with a poise far beyond her pay grade. Tell him that won't be necessary. We're prepared to proceed now, Jonah said, his voice low. She turned back to the group. Translated, softened, she smoothed the edges of confrontation, added nuance, and, without permission, corrected a small translation flaw in the presentation slides that none of Jonah's executives had noticed. Sharif smiled. So did the others. And Jonah, for once in his hyper-controlled empire, sat in silence. Leila was no miracle. She was prepared, and as she translated, Jonah didn't just watch her work, he watched her command. No pause, no hesitation. The room had once been an arena of power where she had been unseen. But today, her voice filled every inch of it. Across the room, Caroline watched with awe, but behind her, from a side hallway, another assistant named Vanya, blonde, calculating, Ivy League polished, stood with arms crossed, eyes sharp. Jealousy doesn't need translation. After nearly 2 hours, the deal was back on track. Leila finished one final translation as the investors stood and extended their hands. They say they consider you trustworthy, she told Jonah softly. Thanks to Ms. Omar. Jonah gave a stiff nod, still caught between gratitude and bruised pride. As the room cleared, Jonah remained seated, watching Leila gather her notes. The cloth from earlier now sat forgotten on the floor beside her. He asked, "Where did you learn to do that?" She didn't smile, just said, "In rooms where no one expected anything of me." He said nothing else. For once, Jonah Caldwell had no response. But in the shadows of the hallway, Vanya quietly pulled up the kitchen's security feed from earlier that morning. Her fingers hovered over her keyboard. Her next move wouldn't be subtle. The next morning, the mansion felt colder, even under the California sun. Same marble, same framed awards, same gallery of corporate grandeur. But now, whispers floated in the air like perfume. Leila walked in just after sunrise, carrying her lunch in a plain brown paper bag. Her gray cleaning uniform still clung to her frame. But the way she moved was different. Her shoulders no longer curled inward. Her gaze no longer pointed at the floor. At the top of the stairs stood Vanya. "Morning, Leila," she called out sweetly, too sweet. Leila looked up, steady as ever. "Good morning, Ms. Vanya." Vanya descended like she was gliding down a throne. Her heels hit the marble in sharp, threatening clicks. "So, your little moment yesterday. Quite the talk of the house. Must feel amazing to finally be noticed." Leila offered a calm smile. Sometimes one moment is all it takes. Especially when it's earned. Vanya's jaw clenched, and she walked away, perfume trailing like smoke behind her. By noon, Jonah summoned Leila to his home office. She walked in expecting a reprimand, or worse, a carefully veiled dismissal. But Jonah looked different. His sleeves were rolled, his tie loosened, his eyes softer. "I spoke with the investors," he began. "They were impressed. They want you in the next round of meetings." Officially. Leila raised an eyebrow. "As a translator?" He shook his head. "As our international liaison, you'd represent Caldwell Innovations in all Gulf-related negotiations." She studied him. "And your team? They're just going to accept that?" "They'll have to," he replied, "or they can find new jobs." Leila sat down, back straight, voice calm. "Do you trust me, or are you just trying to save the deal?" Jonah didn't flinch. "Maybe both. But yesterday, I saw someone I can't ignore." She nodded slowly. "Then I'll do it. But I have one condition." "Name it." "No more uniform. And I don't walk through the back door anymore." He didn't hesitate. "Deal." When Leila stepped back into the hallway, everything looked the same, but felt completely different. The portraits on the walls, the staircase, even the light filtering in through the windows, it all seemed to shimmer in quiet acknowledgement. She no longer walked like someone cleaning someone else's empire. She walked like a woman building her own. But down in the corporate wing, a storm had already begun. Vanya stood in the copy room with a document in hand, a finalized draft of the new Gulf region agreement. She stared at a single clause she had discreetly altered. Just one line, translated imperfectly, a vague sentence about intellectual property that, if left unnoticed, would shift patent control entirely into Jonah's hands. "Let's see how brilliant the maid really is," she whispered, pressing send. 3 days later, Leila walked through the glass doors of Caldwell Innovations' downtown headquarters. She didn't wear the gray anymore. She didn't carry cleaning supplies. Her ID badge read, Leila Omar, International Communications Coordinator. The marble-floored lobby was as imposing as ever. But the way she moved through it, low heels tapping with unshaken grace, made executives glance twice. Up on the 14th floor, the Arab investors were already seated for round 2. Jonah greeted them with corporate poise. But when Leila entered the room, they all stood with warm smiles. "Miss Omar," said Sharif, the eldest, in Arabic, "it is a joy to see you again." She greeted them in return. Elegant, effortless, her presence calmed the room. The air changed. The meeting began. Leila didn't just translate, she navigated. She smoothed rough phrases, softened unintended jabs, expanded metaphors into culturally resonant ideas. She clarified strategy. She prevented offense before it was spoken. And every time she did, Jonah watched with something deeper than admiration, humility, maybe even remorse. But in the downstairs copy room, Vanya smirked at her inbox. A reply had arrived. Clause 14 Intellectual Property. Subject to internal review. Report to HR immediately. Back upstairs, Leila scanned a draft being handed across the table. Her eyes paused, narrowed. Something wasn't right. She ran her fingers across a single clause. Then looked up. "Mr. El Nasir," she said in Arabic, with respect. "This clause, this line, it's not in the English version. And it contradicts what was agreed upon verbally." Jonah leaned in. What kind of contradiction? This line would give Caldwell full control over all patents developed abroad. That violates the trust agreement and could destroy everything we've built. The room went silent, then cold. Jonah's face turned pale. "Are you sure?" "I'm certain. But if I correct it now, I can save the meeting." The investors were already whispering among themselves, eyes tight with suspicion. Leila stood. She addressed them directly, calmly, and truthfully. She acknowledged the error, explained the misunderstanding, and offered a revised translation on the spot. She didn't just fix the clause, she healed the rift it had caused. When she sat down, Sharif placed a hand gently on the table and said in Arabic, "You do not work for him. He works because you are here." Jonah exhaled, a soft, stunned laugh escaping his lips. Because it was true. Later that day, Vanya entered Jonah's office unannounced. Her steps were sharp, her voice sharper. "We need to talk." Jonah didn't look up from the paperwork. "If this is about clause 14, I already know. That was a formatting mistake." Vanya snapped. "No," Jonah said, finally raising his eyes, calm but cutting. "It was sabotage." Leila caught it. Again. Her face twisted. "You're blinded by her. You're throwing away years of loyalty for a glorified maid who got lucky." "Watch your words," Jonah warned, voice low and lethal. "She doesn't belong in this world." Vanya hissed. "She'll unravel everything." "No," he said quietly. "She's showing us what it could have been if we hadn't spent decades ignoring voices like hers." Vanya's jaw tensed. "If she stays, I go." Jonah didn't blink. "Then you know where the door is." Vanya's exit was swift and loud. The slam of the door echoed down the marble hallway. Just outside, Leila stood near the terrace, arms folded, watching the garden below, the same terrace she once swept in silence. She didn't flinch as Jonah walked up beside her. "You heard?" he asked. "No," she replied, "but I felt it. She's gone." Leila nodded slowly. "Someone always gets hurt when someone else rises." "You didn't hurt anyone, Leila," Jonah said quietly. "They just weren't ready for you to shine." She turned to face him, gaze clear. "So tell me, Mr. Caldwell, who am I to you now?" He met her eyes. "Someone who made me question everything." They stood there, no longer boss and employee. Just two people, redefined by a moment that neither of them saw coming. 3 days later, the deal was signed. Caldwell Innovations officially entered the Middle East market, armed not just with technology, but with trust. Trust brokered not by a boardroom strategist or PR firm, but by a woman who, until days ago, mopped floors no one saw. Leila walked the corridors of the company's global headquarters differently now. She no longer wore a badge to prove her worth. Her presence was her ID. Some offered her polite smiles. Others kept their eyes low. A few whispered, confused, unsettled, but Leila noticed none of it. Or rather, she noticed everything, and chose not to shrink because of it. At 3:07 p.m., her office intercom buzzed. Jonah's voice filtered through. Steady, Leila, can you come in for a minute? Inside, his office had changed. Less cold steel, more lived-in wood, framed photographs that looked real, not curated, a jacket slung over the back of a chair instead of neatly pressed and pinned. The investors are planning something new, he began. A research hub in the Gulf. State of the art. They want you on site for the first 3 months. She raised an eyebrow. In person? Yes. Strategy. Cultural alignment. You'd be the face of the partnership. Leila remained silent. Jonah stood. You changed this deal. You changed this company. Hell, you changed me. She looked up at him. Voice calm. Are you offering this because it makes business sense, or because you finally see me? Jonah paused. Both. She stepped closer, eyes locked on his. Then you need to understand something. If I go, my sister goes with me. She's stable now, but I won't leave her behind. That's non-negotiable. Of course, he said without missing a beat. Anything you need. Leila walked to the tall glass window behind him. The city stretched endlessly, shimmering steel and blinking lights. She whispered, my whole life. People said, you can't. Now, for once, someone said, why not? Jonah nodded. Quiet. You've always been bigger than the roles they forced you into. As she turned to leave, she didn't walk like an employee leaving her boss's office. She walked like a founder inspecting a corner of what would one day be her empire. Later that night, in a high-rise hotel room overlooking Abu Dhabi, Leila stood on the balcony. The warm desert wind lifted strands of her hair. Inside, her sister Hannah slept peacefully, blankets tucked tight, her breathing slow and calm. For the first time in years, Leila felt like she could inhale without carrying the weight of 10 invisible lives on her back. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jonah. How are you? Really? She stared at it for a moment before replying. At peace. You? His reply came fast. Trying to figure out who I was before I met you, and why I let that version of me last so long. The messages continued over the next few days. Work talk turned into late-night thoughts. Logistics turned into jokes. Updates turned into confessions. Then, one night, he called. Hey, I know it's late. Got a minute? For you? 1 minute. When you're back, I want to take you somewhere. Let me guess. Some overpriced rooftop steakhouse with $12 water? He laughed. No, I want to take you to the neighborhood I grew up in. It's not fancy, but it's where I learned what ambition tastes like. Leila paused. Then maybe I'll say yes. He hesitated, then added, you didn't just change this company. Leila, you changed me, and honestly, that scares the hell out of me. Leila's voice dropped, soft and steady. Fear is the tax we pay for transformation. Jonah, learn to walk with it. There was silence. Then he whispered, you make me want to be better. Not for points, not for guilt, just because I want to. She looked out at the glowing skyline. Stars blinking behind skyscrapers. Then start. But don't do it for me. Do it for the version of you the world hasn't met yet. The next morning, Leila was invited to a private ceremony with the investors. The oldest among them, Mr. Sharif, handed her a small box. Inside, a delicate gold pendant inscribed in Arabic, wisdom on one side, courage on the other. You didn't just translate our words. He said, you translated our hearts. That is worth more than any number in a contract. As Leila closed her fingers around the pendant, something shifted inside her. She was no longer the bridge. She was becoming the architect. 2 years later, the company name etched into the building's front facade no longer read Caldwell Innovations. It now read, Caldwell & Omar International, a global firm powered by shared leadership, rooted in respect, and inspired by two people who once lived on opposite ends of the social scale. Leila didn't wear a badge anymore. Her name lived on policy documents. press releases, and innovation panels across the world. But today, she stood on familiar ground, the garden outside the old Caldwell mansion. Only now, it wasn't a mansion, it was the Omar Leadership Foundation, an institute for immigrant youth, young black girls, and overlooked dreamers who had never been given the chance to rise. In the courtyard, a group of young girls sat in a circle, notebooks in hand, listening to a guest speaker talk about global leadership. Leila stood at the back, silent, watching. Jonah stood beside her. "Do you remember the first time you really saw me?" she asked. He smiled. "Yeah, you were holding a rag, but it felt like you were carrying a revolution." She nodded. "I was, and I still am." They walked together, slow. Then Jonah stopped. "Sometimes I wonder, what if that translator hadn't cancelled? You'd have closed the deal. Eventually, but I would have gone back to seeing right through you." Leila turned to him. "You know why this all worked?" "Why?" "Because when someone like me walks into a room they were never invited to, and doesn't leave, the world has no choice but to rearrange itself around that truth." Jonah looked at her, not with pity or guilt, but something heavier. Awe. A soft wind moved through the trees. A young girl sprinted over, clutching a notebook. "Miss Leila, I wrote something. I was wondering if you'd be the first to read it?" Leila knelt down, met her eyes, and smiled. "Of course, sweetheart. Show me everything. The world needs your voice." Because Leila no longer translated words. She translated futures. And where others built walls, she left doors wide open. 6 months passed. The name Leila Omar now echoed in boardrooms, appeared in global media, and was whispered with reverence in university lecture halls. Not because she demanded attention, but because the weight of her story carried it. One afternoon, she stood alone in the executive wing of Caldwell and Omar International, staring at a wall covered in framed global partnership agreements. At the center hung a plaque: "Bridges aren't built by architects. They're built by those who have no choice but to cross them." Jonah entered quietly. "You've barely been back a week, and they already want to send you to London, Nairobi, and Qatar in the next month." Leila turned to face him, calm and centered. "Let them wait. I've crossed oceans for this company. Now, I want to anchor the foundation." He nodded, the weight of her words not lost on him. "You've earned that." She gave him a long look. "You say that a lot now. You've earned this. But you used to only say, 'You're lucky.'" He exhaled. "That's because I used to believe people like me built the ladder. I didn't realize the ladder was placed on someone else's back." Leila gave a faint smile. "Growth looks good on you, Jonah." That evening, she walked past the original glass conference room, the one where it all began. Where she once stood invisible, a rag in one hand and a storm in the other. She opened the door and stepped inside. It looked different now, not because the furniture had changed, but because she had. There was a new chair at the head of the table, hers. And next to it, a sign in bold Arabic script and English translation: "The quietest voice can lead the loudest change." Suddenly, she heard fast footsteps. Her assistant, Rima, burst through the door. "Miss Omar, it's Bianca. She's here." Leila blinked. "Bianca?" Rima nodded. "She's in the lobby. Says she wants 5 minutes. No cameras. Just a conversation." Leila stood motionless for a moment, then nodded. "Send her in." A few minutes later, the door creaked open. Bianca stepped in, heels softer now, face a little more drawn. Less ice queen, more human. Leila didn't rise. She gestured to the seat across from her. "Sit." Bianca did, carefully. "You've built something remarkable," she said, glancing around the room. "I saw the foundation's work. The institute, the Middle East expansion. Your name's everywhere. And yet," Leila replied calmly, "you're not here to congratulate me." Bianca looked away. "I came to say I was wrong." Leila raised an eyebrow. "I was wrong about you. I was wrong to assume intelligence only wore a certain skin, spoke a certain way, entered through a certain door." Leila folded her hands. "And?" Bianca's voice cracked slightly. "I was afraid. You came from a world I never looked at. And you were better than all of us. You shattered the image I built of myself." Leila was silent, then finally spoke. "You tried to break me because I was already cracked. What you didn't know is that light gets in through cracks." Bianca swallowed. I'm not asking for a job. I just needed to say it. Leila studied her. Then I'll say something too. Bianca sat up straighter. I don't hate you, Bianca. I don't even think about you most days. Because I realized the only thing more dangerous than your sabotage was your smallness. Bianca flinched. But I also realized something else. Leila continued. Even the people who tried to bury me taught me where not to plant my roots. Silence filled the room like water rising. Then Leila stood. Bianca stood, too. Thank you for your time, Bianca said, her voice barely above a whisper. Leila nodded once. Walk out through the front door this time. Everyone deserves the chance to leave with dignity. Bianca hesitated, then turned and left. Rima peeked in a moment later. You okay? Leila looked out the window. I'm more than okay. I'm whole. Weeks later, Leila found herself back in Sudan with Hannah, standing in front of the modest home where their father once taught neighborhood children under a tin roof. The paint was peeling, but the love in the walls was permanent. A group of local teens gathered under a tree, notebooks in hand. Hannah walked among them, laughing freely, her recovery now a steady, strong heartbeat. Leila stepped forward. Everyone ready for today's language workshop? The students cheered softly, and she began to teach, not as a maid, not as a translator, not as a CEO, but as a woman who knew the power of words and the importance of being seen. Back in New York, Jonah stood in the Foundation's garden, watching a group of young girls laugh as they tested a homemade robot. One of them ran up to him. Mr. Caldwell, is Miss Leila really a maid before she became a boss? He chuckled. No, sweetheart, she was always a boss. The world just took a little longer to notice. Later that night, Leila sat beneath the Sudanese stars, writing in her journal, her final line. I didn't just learn to speak for others. I taught the world to listen. And with that, the story of the woman who entered a room to clean, and ended up rewriting the room entirely, came full circle. Because Leila Omar wasn't the exception. She was the reminder that greatness often comes disguised in silence. And every closed door is just one voice away from being kicked open. The end. If this story moved you, challenged you, or reminded you of your own quiet power, hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, and drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. More stories like this, bold, beautiful, and true, are coming soon on Tell Night.